After a long and scenic train ride from Prague, where I killed time listening to music and Felix was just playing chess on his phone, we finally arrived in Vienna's impressive and modern train station. The first thing we did, as always, was head straight to our accommodation to drop off our many bags.
First impressions that it's like a clean version of London, at least this surrounding area. We're now walking to the Airbnb.
Our accommodation had a really small and interesting lift that I've never really seen outside of Europe. Basically, you have to access it through a small door, as you can see here.
Oh my gosh, we are in it tight.
You've seen this elevator before?
I have. The only other place I've seen this was at the Cambridge Library.
We were very lucky in securing this place for the price we did. Since we were travelling around New Year's, everything in the city was so expensive. This Airbnb, though it's quite plain, is in an excellent location in the 4th district, which I believe is very popular with students in the city. We were just starving after the long train journey, so we headed straight to dinner. The streets were surprisingly empty and peaceful despite it only being 2 days before New Year's.
Empty? Nice.
Now, I don't think there's any real cheap food in Vienna per se, but we did manage to find a cheap place nearby, and honestly this place didn't disappoint. It was a warm and homely meal, perfect for a winter's day. After dinner, we visited this bookstore called Shakespeare & Company, and you might recognise the name of this bookstore because there's actually a Shakespeare & Co. in Paris, and that branch is quite famous because it was known as almost the second home of famous authors like Ernest Hemingway. I'm a bit embarrassed to say that the reason I visited the Vienna branch was not to buy a book, although I did end up buying one. It was mainly to get my hands on a Shakespeare & Co. tote bag since we weren't planning on visiting Paris during this trip. Unfortunately though, they were sold out of tote bags because apparently a lot of people purchase these as Christmas presents.
Little cute. I got Jack London's book, People of the Abyss. I'm very excited to read it.
This statue here is one of Vienna's many interesting statues, and it's called the Plague Column. It was, as the name suggests, erected during the plague that spread through Vienna in I think the 17th century, and the more I learn about history and events like plagues that used to wipe out a third of the population, the more I'm grateful to live in the 21st century. So we didn't end up having the best experience at this particular cafe, which shall remain unnamed, but we walked in and were seated pretty quickly, but then no one served us.
We arrived outside Cafe Central and this is the line to go in.
We didn't have much luck going to Cafe Central either, which is arguably and understandably one of Vienna's most famous cafes. It just looked gorgeous from the outside at least.
What does that mean? The Royal Ducks.
So we didn't give up on our cafe hunt and eventually decided to go to this cafe in a hotel. The cafe is called Cafe Sacca, and it's named after the famous Sacca cake that was actually invented by the hotel. And honestly, I don't think this is the best Sacca torte in Vienna. It was definitely quite overpriced, and I felt like the cake itself was too dry for my liking, but this is the only Sacca torte I've ever had, so I can't really speak much on that. You can see me here just not really sure if I enjoyed the cake or not. It was honestly a lot better with the whipped cream.
I don't know. time for hot dogs. So we got the hot dog. What's amazing about it is that the bottom is closed, so the hot dog doesn't leak out. It's the most cozy McDonald's ever. It's just like hidden in a little bush here. Anyways, we're trying to head home. The start of today was not great. We woke up quite late at like 9:30 because we're so tired, and the bed was super uncomfortable because there was only one pillow and the duvet was super small. And Felix is not feeling well because he's got a running nose and mouth ulcers. Plus all the pharmacies are closed today, so it's going to be a bit of a pain trying to find something for him. Another thing, his phone stopped charging during the night, and we think it's because he splashed a bit of water into the charging port. So there's a couple of things going wrong at the moment, but we're not going to let that stop us from having a good New Year's Eve. So I'm currently outside this beautiful church, just waiting for Felix to get his warm layers. I think after this we're going to head to a cafe and a pharmacy nearby where Felix can get his mouth ulcer cream. Yeah, it's 2:15.
For brunch, we stopped at this really cozy cafe. I don't remember where it is or what it's called, but there was actually a thrift store within the cafe, which is really cool.
Got my chai latte. This is my brunch.
After brunch, we took a walking tour around the centre of Vienna, around the Habsburg residences, palaces, and many museums. The grand scale of some of these buildings really shocked us, and it's truly astounding when you think about how this single family ruled a large portion of Europe for over 6 centuries. One particular member of the Habsburg family that really fascinated me on this trip was Princess Sisi. Apparently she was a super rebellious princess and lived quite a tragic life. She's known for her obsessive and extensive beauty routine. She would take hours upon hours to brush her long hair, and tragically she also suffered from poor mental health all throughout her life and was eventually assassinated by an Italian anarchist. Unfortunately, we didn't get the time to visit the Sisi Museum, but that is definitely on my list for my next trip to Vienna. And finally, I got to see a Baroque-style library. This is the National Library, and it's one of those places that is just so beautiful that when you're there, you just don't know what to do with yourself. Like, do you take photos? Do you just stare at the ceiling? Oh, there it is, just stunning.
Apple strudel.
Is that like a healthy smoothie?
Healthy smoothie, yeah. Someone put a cigarette butt in this, like, statue.
And this may not be the typical way of spending New Year's Eve, but we decided to have a relatively early night to wrap up the end of 2023 and finish the year at a classic Viennese cafe. Surprisingly, all the cafes were really crowded on New Year's Eve. I don't know if it's a tradition to go to a cafe then, or if people in Vienna just go to cafes regardless of the day.